back to Truck Tech, everyone. Back home this week, we've been on the road for a few weeks, and we've had a chance to bring you some different looking episodes. Now we're back in the so-called home office with, of course, the encyclopedias of baseball behind us. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Our guest is going to be Ted McKlveen, and Ted is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Vern. And yes, Vern does stand for Jules Verne, which we're going to let him explain. But the idea being that, a few weeks back in the Truck Tech newsletter, we talked about super cold, chilled hydrogen, basically. It's always cold, but this is even super cold, in terms of its value for transportation fuel. And so having Ted on the show, we really didn't get to talk to him last time. We have a chance to meet a little bit. Ted, welcome to Truck Tech.
Yeah, Alan, thanks for having me. Excited to share some more about Vern.
Yeah, well, and let's start right there. Now, I think it was 1885, but you could tell the story of how your name came about.
Yeah, well, we just thought it was pretty fun that Jules Verne back in the late 1800s wrote a book, Mysterious Island, in which he mentioned how hydrogen could replace coal and really become a fuel of the future. So just played off of that and seemed to fit well with what we're trying to do here and really make hydrogen be the fuel of the future.
So 140 years, give or take, that you think you might actually be on the cusp of something. So congratulations to you and to Jules Verne. Now, you are still at this stage a seed stage startup. I think I wouldn't say that three times fast, but you're still just getting started, really. But I was fascinated. We did, as I mentioned, we did write about you in the Truck Tech newsletter a few months ago and talked a little bit about what you're working on. It'd be great if you could just sort of take us quickly through the founding of the company and, a little bit of your personal background, if you would, Ted.
Yeah, so that's right. We're a seed stage startup. We've been around for 4 years now, and really just coming back to the founding idea and the origin of the company, we saw the promise, myself and my two co-founders, of hydrogen becoming this fuel of the future. It has a lot of benefits and properties that we can talk about later. Very high density fuel. You can fuel it quickly, and in a lot of ways behave just like a diesel fuel does today. But when we were looking at the landscape, the technologies that were available, there was a lot of emphasis on hydrogen production and making hydrogen lower cost to produce, whether that's through electrolysis or other ways of making hydrogen. And there were also a lot of companies working on the end application, so building fuel cell vehicles or other ways to utilize hydrogen. But what we noticed is that there weren't many companies at all or new technologies being developed really in the middle of the value chain. So how you store and move hydrogen. And that was really the founding insight that led us to dive deeper into this space and say, we need to have a better way to store hydrogen than the decades old technologies of compression and liquefaction. So we saw that opportunity there, and that's really where I came together with our current CTO who got his PhD in hydrogen storage and hydrogen technologies. And we've started a company really around a novel way to store hydrogen where you get substantially higher energy density than the existing methods of hydrogen storage, but at a much lower cost. So that ultimately has a lot of impacts there on the truck performance, the range, the payload, and of course, the dollar per mile.
Sure. And you've got, when you mentioned those two things, those are both things that run at the end of the day, right, to total cost of ownership for potential, hydrogen truck operator. We've got all kinds of things around hydrogen that come up in terms of being, barriers, if you will. You're attacking something, it seems, with this approach of super chilled. I hope that's okay to say it that way. Cryo-compressed, I think is the actual terminology, of hydrogen, but you are offering something, or you hope to offer something that will sort of change the overall affordability picture as well as the availability picture, right? Because I think you talk about being a distributor and, of hydrogen as well as, the storage of hydrogen. These are the two things that your background being in chemistry and your CTOs being, with hydrogen, it sounds like a pretty good mix, right? Overall. Let's ask, I want to find out though, because as we talk about hydrogen in the big picture, how viable is it for transportation, given the cost, the manufacturing, and, some of the criticisms I alluded to?
So we see a really major role for hydrogen within heavy duty trucking and transportation. I'm not somebody who's going to tell you that it's going to be 100% of the market. Of course not. There's an important role for battery electric to play when you have shorter ranges, lighter payloads. But really, where hydrogen's promise shines is in the long haul segment or the vehicles that are payload constrained. Um, Lastly, vehicles that really need to charge quickly. And so, just to offer just a few data points here in terms of why hydrogen is so important within and promising within these segments is first off the density of hydrogen, and you compare that to really the state of the art lithium ion batteries today. Hydrogen's density is over 10 times greater on a gravimetric basis. So per kilogram, hydrogen can store more than 10 times as much energy. So that's really promising for truck operators that are already payload constrained, hitting that weight limit today. And then on the fueling time, the fueling speed, there's a lot of talk about the megawatt charging initiative or the current chargers that are out there about 240, 250 kilowatts. Hydrogen can fuel really about 50 times faster than charging today. So if you compare really on a mile per minute fueling speed, which is I think a metric I like to think about, which is how many miles do you get per minute of fueling. Today, battery electric trucks are around 2 miles per minute, maybe up to close to 6 miles per minute if you're using a faster charging, like closer to that Tesla semi charger. What you can get with hydrogen is closer to 10 miles per minute, and going up from there. 100 miles per minute. So really, it's an order of magnitude greater fueling speed, so 50x greater fueling speed than most of the electric trucks out there today. So all of those, they're not just minor improvements over the battery electric technology. It's really kind of these order of magnitude improvements that make it quite promising. But as you mentioned, there are some challenges that have to be addressed today. So hydrogen fuel is too expensive. We need to develop more stations, and overall the vehicle cost needs to come down. So all that's definitely true. But the reality is we're still in the earlier days of the adoption curve, and all of those will come down. Those costs will come down as this technology is developed.
Well, you describe, without using the term, a drop-in fuel, essentially. Now, granted, it's a little bit higher pressure than a lot of things when you're filling and that sort of thing, but it's not that different, at least today, in terms of when you fill with hydrogen, you're on par, maybe not exactly equal to, but on par with diesel, and so clearly it's a comparable sort of thing. It doesn't require those long waits that, that's one of the drawbacks of today's batteries, as you indicated. I guess what I want to understand now, though, is, there's been through the Inflation Reduction Act, and there's something called 45V, which I shudder to even get into in terms of all of the things that go into that. But basically, it's the framework behind the production of hydrogen in terms of, offering discounts, offering rebates, right? That is very attractive to some companies. But that thing is kind of fraught, isn't it?
Well, so what we see with 45V is it can be very beneficial for hydrogen adoption. And just to give kind of a rough, quite rough, but back the envelope comparison, a kilogram of hydrogen can take you similar distance to a gallon of diesel. And so if you think about dollars at the fuel pump, this 45V program could provide $3 per kilogram subsidy. And so if you think about that and were to say, well, I'll get $3 off per gallon of diesel, of course, that's really meaningful for TCO. And so it could have a big impact on TCO and a big impact on adoption, especially in these early days. So it can be quite helpful. Is it absolutely necessary? Well, it can be helpful in accelerating and moving the market, but ultimately, when really anybody that does analysis is looking at the economic viability for the long run and the steady state, you don't count on having subsidies. You want to make sure that the technology can stand on its own 2 feet. And there's plenty of pathways for hydrogen to reach economic competitiveness with diesel without that subsidy.
So you're not hanging anything today on that subsidy or any others at this point, although subsidies are driving the sort of the nascent growth of everything from the battery electric truck to the hydrogen truck. And of course, if we talk about California, that's where, the pollution penalties get moved from one pocket into, incentives of another, although those are beginning to change as well. So, you're probably wise not to count on these incentives over the long term. One of the things that occurred to me, and I don't know if this is a good comparison or not, but if you think about where batteries are now and the move and the hopes for solid state batteries and ultimately the improved energy density, it feels like what you're doing with cryo-compressed hydrogen is similar in a way because you're improving the density, you're reducing the weight, which again is a drawback of battery electric trucks because there's so much weight and they do impact ability for cargo. So do you see that as a fair comparison? Is that on close or anything?
Yeah. So with, as you mentioned, with solid state batteries, the real benefit there, and the thing that gets everybody excited, is that density improvement, and not just a small incremental improvement, but close to a doubling in some respects of the density on a volumetric basis for the solid state side. Similarly, relative to existing hydrogen, 700 bar, 10,000 psi compressed hydrogen, we represent nearly a doubling in density, and so I think in that sense, it is kind of a good analogy to draw there. Of people always look for a breakthrough in battery chemistry, and we're bringing up really a breakthrough in hydrogen storage chemistry. What I would say is we often get the question of, does hydrogen still make sense if there's a solid state battery breakthrough and a doubling in density? And that's where, back to some of the numbers I was mentioning earlier, really hydrogen has such kind of an order of magnitude density improvement that it's still substantially a higher density. Even if batteries were to double, hydrogen is still meaningfully higher density.
Well, and literally you're a lightweight compared to battery weight. And even if you had solid state batteries, it could take some of the weight out. You would probably still win on the actual how much of the 82,000 pounds that you can have. You'd probably still win that handily. I guess I'd like you now maybe to take us through where you are. And I've seen your tank. I've seen some of the things that you're working on. You do have a prototype truck coming, I think this year. Maybe you can kind of walk us through where you are now and maybe where you'll be by the end of the year.
That's right. So we have tested and demonstrated our hydrogen storage tanks on a smaller vehicle. So we did it at the end of last year. We installed their system and we're able to operate that vehicle actually with the OEM driving hundreds of miles and up to 100 miles an hour. So really put that technology through a rigorous test campaign. We've also done similar test campaigns for larger scale storage systems, really that truck scale storage system at the national labs. And so at Lawrence Livermore National Lab have shown our technology at the relevant scale. What comes up next for us is that first truck, as you mentioned. So we're currently working with this company in Alberta, Diesel Technologies Industries, and we're working with them to install our hydrogen storage system on a Class 8 truck. And we'll be demonstrating that by the end of this year.
This is something that, having a truck and being able to demonstrate it does begin to get people interested. Are you finding interest in this already from those who maybe it's not at the fleet level, but certainly the industry's aware of you. You're working with a national lab and that sort of thing. Are you still, in your estimation, in the proving a science project phase, or have you moved beyond?
So over the last 4 years, we've really completed that initial R&D, and now we're moving more into the pilot demonstration phase. So that's really that kind of junction point that we're at right now. We have worked with two OEMs previously with different paid demonstration agreements, and we currently have planned demonstrations with two more OEMs of our technology coming up in 2025. And so the end of this year is really the own truck that we're building and can use as our R&D workhorse and showpiece. But the next year is when we're doing a couple of demos with some of the major OEMs. And that's really where we've seen a lot of that commercial interest from really the leading OEMs. And as you know, they're all developing both hydrogen and battery electric platforms. And for their hydrogen platform, they want to have the highest performance vehicle possible. So we really are getting a lot of interest from the leading OEMs in the space.
When you're testing, would you be going sort of those long 1,000 or 1,200 mile runs on a fill up? Would that be the intent? I went to Germany last year, and when Daimler was showing they did about 650 miles, 1,000 kilometers run from one part of Germany to Berlin, and they did it, the single fill. They, put stickers over the tank, and so it would show that it wasn't. You might be familiar with this. It wasn't tampered with, and that sort of thing. Is that the kind of demo you're looking at?
Yeah, so both highlighting the range benefits as well as payload. I think range gets a lot of talk, but also weight of the system is really important. So it's really proving both of those out in real operational route scenarios.
Mhm. Your weight, I think we should talk about that because your weight is dramatically lower than battery weight. Can you sort of run those real fast for us in terms of
Yeah,
tank weight and
yeah, common, just to put it kind of on an apples to apples metric basis with batteries. A lot of people talk about watt hours per kilogram. A good lithium ion battery is around the 300, maybe up to 400 watt hours per kilogram, really for the state of the art today. And where we come in with our hydrogen storage system is over 3,000. So well over 3,000 watt hours per kilogram. So that's that really 10x improvement in gravimetric density I was talking about.
is that something that's explainable enough, or the performance itself will prove it, I guess, to OEMs who probably are less concerned with how you got there than does it work, right?
Yeah, and that's why this first demo at the end of this year on a Class 8 truck will be incredibly helpful, just showing that it works at the relevant scale. And you can weigh the truck, you can weigh the system, and really see the proof with your own eyes. And so that will be really helpful as a result of these demos and pilots. We've really shown these metrics at the tank scale, but there's always something kind of special about actually doing it on a truck. So that will be helpful as part of these pilots and demos.
Yeah, hooking this up. Are you looking at different forms of storage? I know you've got the kind of side saddle tanks that you're working with now. Are you looking at doing kind of a back of cab thing too, with maybe smaller canisters and that sort of thing? Because these are all things that come up in terms of aero and things like that. As far as a truck's performance, you can get them a much greater range, but you still want the aero benefits and things like that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, our storage system is really the underlying technology is pretty flexible in terms of form factor. So we can have longer, narrower tanks, we can have thicker and wider tanks, which means that we can package them in different places on the vehicle. It's also something a little bit less related to this conversation, but we can even use our storage technology for other market applications, such as the delivery of hydrogen. How does hydrogen actually get to the fuel station in the first place? And really helping to minimize the cost in other aspects of the value chain and supply chain for hydrogen, such as that midstream. But specifically to your question, yes, we were actually building both the side saddle arrangement as well as a back of cab configuration. Now, we see a lot of benefit for that side saddle. You actually save a lot of weight also from getting rid of the rack that's used to hold the tanks behind the cab. So there is some good benefit from that side saddle arrangement. But we know a lot of the OEMs today have that backpack configuration. Hyundai's truck, the Packard Toyota system, as well as Nikola's truck, and others have started with that backpack arrangement. So we'll be building in that configuration as well, so that we can really easily install our systems onto an existing chassis, an existing system, as the OEMs themselves kind of refine and finalize what their overall design will be.
Sure. Well, and you're exactly right. I haven't seen a side saddle hydrogen system. We have it for natural gas, of course, because that's been the traditional approach. But now they've moved to more of a back of cab arrangement as well. It is interesting to me that you are presumably talking to these OEMs too, those that are actually Hyundai, Nikola. Again, Toyota is doing its own systems, fuel cell systems in Kentucky, I believe. I presume these are all potential partners for you down the road.
That's right. Yeah. So we really, our vision is to have the default hydrogen storage system for the industry. And so to have the industry really come around and align on cryocompression, our technology, as the hydrogen storage technology for the vehicles. And what that means is we don't want to work with just one OEM. We want to work with all of them and have that storage technology really be adopted by the industry. So yeah, it's not only the big four conventional OEMs, but as well as some of these newer players within hydrogen and zero emission vehicles. We're definitely talking to those companies as well.
Well, I know, and I'll sort of get you out of here of this, but I know that you're working on a mobile system, a mobile fueling system, which is also something that Nikola right now is kind of living on that. They're the ones who have more trucks out there, not huge numbers, but a few, and they're working with mobile refuelers. Presumably, that's something that does that come first, maybe even before you get a truck out there?
So we see mobile refuelers as being really helpful in breaking that chicken or egg problem. I think we almost made it through the conversation without me saying that chicken or the egg.
Almost, but you just lost all this respect from me right now. No, I'm joking.
But so the mobile refuelers can really help with that because you don't need to wait until you build a full station to start buying trucks and start the fueling process. So in that sense, they make a lot of sense. You can have a mobile fueler in one place and then use that to start to grow your hydrogen truck fleet, maybe install permanent infrastructure, then move that mobile fueler somewhere else to start to grow and develop a fleet in a different location. Our current business is not based on selling and developing these. Now, we actually have a mobile refueler that we've developed, but we're planning just to use it for ourselves, actually, just to show off our technology. So it's more of an enabler for pilots and demonstrations, but not the type of business that we're getting in.
Okay. Well, I think there might be some business out there. I don't know. I'm not, but in any case, well, Ted, this has been great. Thank you for spending some time with us. I think we've covered. I'll give you the final word here, but I think we've covered a lot in our 20-some minutes.
Yeah, I think so. This has been a great conversation, and I know there's always a lot of folks out there that are wondering where hydrogen's at in its commercialization phase, and really we see it as being an incredibly exciting time. I think it's here, it's coming, and we're excited to be a part of it and doing what we can to make it as economical as possible.
Well, I think, I'll just give it away. At 31, you've got plenty of time to work on it, and you and your partners, your co-founders. Listen, Ted, thanks again for being with us here at Truck Tech.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
Well, folks, we will end this show today, but we do want to remind you of a couple of things. We've got, of course, the Future of Freight Festival 3S, F3, coming up in November. You can get a discount ticket to that. You watch Friday in the newsletter, the Truck Tech newsletter, you'll have a discount code there. And also, we're open now for the Freight Tech 25 nominees. That's something that is also available at FreightWaves.com. You can go there and get your nominations in. I guess you can self-nominate. There's no reason why you shouldn't. But in any case, those will be announced at F3 in November in Chattanooga. So thanks for again to Ted. Thanks for you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.